Order! Order. The House has directed the Speaker to make a statement at the beginning of each session about the duties and responsibility of honourable members. I begin by reminding members of their duty to observe the Code of Conduct and the Behaviour Code agreed by the House, and to behave with civility and fairness in all their dealings. Unacceptable behaviour that doesn't meet the standard of these codes will be dealt with seriously, independently and with effective sanctions. The House asserts its privilege of freedom of speech. That privilege is enjoyed by members of Parliament only in their work in proceedings of this House. As private individuals, we are equal under the law with those who we represent. This privilege is there to ensure that our constituents can be represented without fear or favour. It is an obligation upon all of us to exercise that privilege responsibly. The Speaker does not have the power to police the accuracy of members' contributions. Unfortunately, it is incumbent on all members to be accurate in what they say in this House and to correct any mistakes as soon as possible. All members, including ministers, should take the responsibility in this House seriously. I remind ministers that the government's own ministerial code make clear that important policy announcements should be made in the first instance in this House when sitting, and some people seem to have short memories. Both front and back benches must also adhere to the courtesies of this House. That includes informing other members in advance of visits to their constituencies, except purely private purposes. I remind all members that it's important that they are able to raise matters with me, seek guidance from the clerks freely, and for that reason, any such conversations and correspondence should be treated as confidential. I want all members and everyone in the parliamentary community to be able to go about their work safely online, here in Westminster and in their constituencies. We have a duty to be vigilant and to assist those whose job it is to keep us safe. Finally, I want to say something about how we treat each other and the language we use in the chamber. What we say and how we say things in this House matters. It is and has an impact on colleagues, on those who follow our proceedings and the wider political discourse across the country. Members should be heard courteously, whatever their views, but in this place we are all honourable members. And while I expect robust political debate, I will not accept undignified language or improper criticism of individual members. Our constituents expect us to focus on the very serious issues that they care about, rather than making cheap attacks on each other. If a member falls short of the standards expected of us all, there are ways of dealing with that, but not by accusations made as sideswipes during questions or debates. If we fail to treat each other with respect in debate, that diminishes our work and risks raising the temperature of discussions outside this place, particularly on social media, which already too often descend into abuse against members and others. I expect members from all sides to treat each other with respect. Before moving to the first business of the new session, I'd like to express my very best wishes to all honourable members and to all those who work for the House and work for members for the continuing support they provide to us. I've got to say, they are the unsung heroes. So thank you all for working with members and working in this House. I now call upon the Clerk of the House.
Outlawries Bill.
The echo is very good. I have to acquaint the House that this House has this day attended His Majesty in the House of Peers, and that His Majesty was pleased to make the most gracious speech from the throne to both Houses of Parliament, of which I have for greater accuracy obtained a copy. I shall direct that the terms of the speech be printed in the votes and proceedings. Copies are available within the vote office. Before I call the mover and the seconder, I want to announce the proposed pattern of the debate during the remaining days of the Loyal Address. Today, debate on the address. Tomorrow, Getting Britain Working Again. Monday the 18th of May, Back in Business to Create Economic Growth. Tuesday the 19th of May, Energy Security. Wednesday the 20th of May, Defence Readiness. I now have the privilege to call Naz Shah to move, and then I will call Chris Vince to second the address. Naz Shah.
I beg to move that a humble address be presented to His Majesty as follows. Most gracious Sovereign, we, Your Majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects of the Commons of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, in Parliament assembled, beg leave to offer our humble thanks to Your Majesty for the gracious speech which Your Majesty has addressed to both Houses of Parliament. It would be remiss of me not to say a few words about the outstanding state visit by His Majesty to the United States. We saw eloquent oratory, remarkable wit and genuine statesmanship from His Majesty, presenting President Trump with the original brass bell, inscribed with his name before he was even born, from the Second World War submarine HMS Trump, suggesting that if they needed to give us a ring, was a masterstroke in diplomacy. His Majesty returned, very humbly of course, having secured the lifting of trade barriers on Scotch whisky. Given the performance, I was rather worried His Majesty might come back with the 13 colonies as well. It is a huge honour for me and my constituents of Bradford West to move the Loyal Address. This is the second time my constituency of Bradford West has been honoured in this way. In 1959, the then member for Bradford West, Arthur Tiley, seconded the Loyal Address. When the Chief Whip called me about today, my first reaction, like many across this House, when the Chief called, is, uh-oh, what have I done? But then that uh-oh soon turned into, oh my days, no way, with the biggest smile ever. I remember clearly listening to the speeches by my honourable friends and members for Bootle, as well as Vauxhall and Camberwell Green, the last time this occasion happened, and thinking, now that is an honour. Had I known God was listening, I'd have asked to win the Euro Millions, Mr. Speaker. In fact, Mr. Speaker, had I known not always voting with the government also works, I might have done that. I am indeed humbled and honoured, primarily for being trusted by the people of Bradford West for placing their faith in me and sending me to this place. Given this opportunity to be the first ever Muslim to propose the Loyal Address in this chamber, and of course, seeing the meltdown of the far right online of a Muslim even an act of domination. So in light of this, I must assure them this is not a takeover. I must state it is, as per convention, a joke, but if seeing black and brown people on TV makes you feel sick, my speech is going to make you vomit. On a more serious note, Mr. Mr. Speaker, over the last few months, I have had the opportunity to tell my own story, a story of my life and the challenges I faced growing up. I often pinch myself whilst in this chamber questioning, how could a girl who lived the life I lived be given such an honour to represent her city in the mother of all parliaments? Mr. Speaker, it is because, despite the challenges we may face as a nation and the differences in approaches we present across this House, I know without a doubt that as someone who comes from the ethnic, religious and socio-economic background that I came from, whose entire life crashed before her, I would never have been given such an honour in any other country than this one. My own country, our country. For me, there is no nation greater than ours. We are the greatest nation on earth, and I am a true patriot. Raised in abject poverty, living in a single room because we couldn't afford to heat the whole house, and suffering tuberculosis as a result, I understand firsthand what this means. Therefore, I welcome the continued commitment from the government to prioritise addressing the cost of living crisis. In doing so, we cannot ignore the instability across the world around us. The plight of the Palestinians, the war in Ukraine, the instability in the Strait of Hormuz, and the growing global threats for which we must also be ready for. Living in a globalised world means there is an ever-growing connection between the local, the national and the international. What happens out there reaches every home and doorstep across every constituency. The defence of our country is rightfully also amongst these top agenda items. As a proud graduate of the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, which, by the way, I recommend to all members to take part in and support, I have nothing but admiration and thanks for those who have served and continue to serve to protect our tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, I also have the honour to serve as the Prime Minister's Trade Envoy for Indonesia and the ASEAN, a region of more than 660 million people and a hugely important geopolitical and trade corridor. I welcome the continued commitment to strengthening our place across the world. Without international trade and growth in our economy, we cannot deliver the jobs, investment and support we need across our country. I will continue to play my part in securing trade and investment for the UK and championing British business abroad with colleagues from across this House. Closer to home, I had the honour to serve on the Assisted Dying Bill Committee, something beyond party lines, where I had the opportunity to work with colleagues from across the House, including the work I did with the Honourable Member for East Wiltshire. Whilst I didn't eventually support the bill, I paid tribute to the member for Batley and Spen for her work, commitment and passion. Talking about beyond party lines, Mr. Speaker, I noted with interest, as I'm sure the whole nation did too, the previous Duchy of Lancaster, the noble Lord Gove's, rather peculiar fascination with our Home Secretary. He actually confessed to browsing the internet for her images. Thankfully, Mr. Speaker, knowing our Home Secretary, as I do, I'm confident that this is not the kind of cross-party mischief she would reciprocate. But I do have a guilty pleasure of my own. And no, it's not a Tory. Unfortunately, for my calorie count, it is custard and cake. I blame Godfrey and Sharon in the tea room for their unwavering encouragement to indulge sparingly. I am the proud I'm proud to be the first woman elected to Parliament for the constituency of Bradford West, a constituency with a history of extraordinary women who broke every barrier that patriarchy put in front of them. The Bronte sisters changed English literature forever, but had to use men's names to publish their writing. The suffragettes of Bradford went to Holloway Prison for the right to vote. The women of Manningham Mills walked out into the cold, changing our political landscape forever. Margaret Macmillan pioneered free school meals, and they were trialled in 1904 in the school I attended, Green Lane Primary, leading to the Education Act of 1906, which cemented free school meals into our history. And Barbara Castle, shaped by Bradford streets and schools, went on to write equal pay into law. And I am proud to serve alongside equally formidable women with the member of Bradford South and indeed the member for Shipley. There is something in the air in Bradford as a whole, something that produces women who will not be told. I promise this House I have zero intention of breaking with that. If today our country beams with pride because of the many great changes made by successive Labour governments, none of it would have been possible without the women who led the Manningham Mill strike, which then led to the founding of the Independent Labour Party, conceived and formed in Bradford West. It was in Bradford that a man named Keir first took the chair of the Labour movement. And despite 130 years, 2 world wars, and roughly 47 leadership elections, the party remains in the hands of a Keir. Prime Minister, nobody can say that you don't know how to fight on. I could not make this speech without recognising David Hockney, a boy from a Bradford terrace who pushed his paintings around the city in a pram. David went on to become the world's most famous living artist. David once said that if you look closely, Bradford is a city with magic. I don't know whether he was looking into the future and literally describing Bradford's magician Dynamo, Zayn Malik's magical music, or our leg-spinning, World Cup-winning magic of our very own Adil Rashid. But Bradford is, without question, a place of wonders. Bradford is also a place of culture. The jewel in the crown, as it is often referred to, is the Bradford Literature Festival, now one of the largest in the UK literature festivals and the largest of its kind throughout Europe, pairing excellence with access for those who would otherwise be excluded from culture. In 2025, Bradford was proud to be named UK City of Culture, home to a rich, diverse population built on the back of a historic title as the wool capital of the world. In the 1850s, German Jewish merchants came to Bradford and built the magnificent warehouses of what we now call Little Germany, helping to make Bradford a global trading city and the proud home of the oldest synagogue in the north. A synagogue that recently the Muslim community stepped in to save when the roof was about to cave in, illustrating the relationship within the Muslim and Jewish community in Bradford. A century later, men from Azad Jammu and Kashmir and India and Pakistan arrived in the 50s and 60s, working tireless night shifts to keep the mills running, ensuring Britain's economy continued to flourish after the Second World War. Each generation of newcomers didn't just come to Bradford, they built Bradford. Mr. Speaker, chicken tikka masala might be the UK's national dish, but I must inform the whole House that you have not had a curry until you have had a Bradford curry. Whether it is the legendary family naans on trees invented by the late King of Curry Shabir Hussain, the founder of Akbar's, the subcontinental flavours of Agra, Mumtaz, Jinnah, My Lahore's, or any one of the hundreds of restaurants across the city, Bradford does curry like nowhere else. The curries are that good, they even defy the current Manjaro jab. A note to the House Secretary, he may well have to develop a stronger solution. I recommend Bradford's curry to all members of this House. Now that Bradford has a few reform councillors, perhaps a member for Clacton, who I see is not in his place, could pay a visit and treat them to a good curry, followed by a pint brewed in Bradford. In fact, given the size of his recent gift that we are now all well aware of, he could probably take half of Bradford out and still be left with plenty of change. Bradford is, Mr. Speaker, the youngest city in the United Kingdom. It has been named the most entrepreneurial too. Morrison's grew from a market stall in our city to a household name. It's a place where I promise this House there is no poverty of aspiration, talent or ambition. But the poverty of infrastructure over decades has left us behind. Bradford is turning a corner. 270 million in public sector investment is building private sector confidence, with a combined pipeline now reaching 2.3 billion. I am grateful for our government support, which includes a new hospital in Airedale, 2 billion integrated settlement for West Yorkshire, giving our Labour Mayor, Tracy Brabin, the power and flexibility to invest in local jobs, new homes and improving skills. A Bradford City Station, 2.1 billion investment in transport for the city regions, funding enabling West Yorkshire to deliver mass transit, better buses and repair our roads and potholes. All of this is pumping confidence into a city ready for investors to benefit from its untapped potential. Northern Powerhouse Rail is not a nice-to-have. It is the difference between Bradford's young people building their futures at home or building them somewhere else. On this occasion, I would also like to pay my thanks to all the House staff across the estate who ensure that Parliament can play the role that it does. They are hugely deserving of our appreciation for everything they do. And outside of this place, the security services and our police forces who keep us safe with the ever-increasing risks and threats to our democracy. Given the magnitude of this moment, I would also like to emphasise the huge weight and burden of responsibility on our shoulders. When we speak in this chamber, it carries meaning and impact. It impacts that boy who takes off his kippah, the girl who removes her hijab, fearing for their safety because their race and religion has become a political football. An attack on anyone or anyone's place of worship, be it a synagogue, a mosque, a church, a temple, a gurdwara, or of any kind of religious institution, is an attack on our British way of life. We must strengthen our communities against the rising tide of nationalism and populism. In a world ever more dangerous, an online world ever more toxic, society more than ever needs unity, calmness and leadership to make our country the best it can be. The burden of responsibility falls on all our shoulders, and it has never been greater. Mr. Speaker, it is also convention to part with words of wisdom for those who are slightly newer to this place. With that in mind, I simply say this: nurture the pragmatism of being an elected representative of the people who have put their trust in you and sent you here, but never, never forget the passion of an activist. Keep that fire burning, because it is indeed that passion that will sustain you and carry you through. Because sometimes it gets difficult here. Mr. Speaker, a King's Speech is meant to be a fresh start. Parliament's version of clearing the kitchen table, making room for the work ahead and gathering the family round, reminding ourselves what the country has sent us here to do. As honourable members may know, I believe in a full table you make space Hospitality matters in my home. You listen, you serve people properly. But good hospitality and politics itself is more than who speaks first or indeed the loudest. It's about noticing the quiet ones, those who may be less organised, not as powerful, but nonetheless equally, if not more important, the voiceless whose voices we need to become. Amen. Mr. Speaker, for someone like me, who spent her formative years fighting a campaign to release her mother from prison, who did not have a formal education beyond the age of 12, spelling, grammar and parliamentary language and phrases don't come naturally. Forced into a marriage at 15, forced to live with a life with hearing aids, lugging a black bin liner of belongings as a homeless teenager, left all alone as a guardian to a younger brother and sister, without a shoulder of support or stability in life, attempting suicide as I couldn't see a way out from my despair. Yet here I stand. Yeah. With the world's eyes watching the state opening of Parliament on this momentous occasion, given the privilege of this moment. If this was not my story, I would only believe it to be fiction. But the truth is, there can be a light at the end of a tunnel. Yeah. Because as I believe, and my life personifies for me, after hardship comes ease. I stood in this chamber for the first time and pinched myself. I still do. Where someone like me can end up like somewhere like here, representing the city I love, in the mother of all parliaments. Bradford and my country gave me everything. I intend to spend every day in this house returning the favour. It is an honour of my life to move the loyal address on behalf of the people of Bradford West. I commend the motion to the House.
I won't mention the Bolton-Bradford game on Thursday. I now call Chris Binns to second the address. Chris Binns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an absolute honour to second this humble address, but can I start by thanking my honourable friend from Bradford West for her incredibly powerful speech. And can I echo her words about the importance of communities coming together to tackle that divisive politics that we've seen so often, and thank her for that. Can I also echo her comments about the House staff and the incredible job that they do to support all of us? Following my recent London Marathon run, it was suggested by two of the doorkeepers that the only reason Sebastian Sewar ran it in less than 2 hours so he could get away from me talking about Harlow. And as a big fan of curries myself, I look forward to having the opportunity to sample one in Bradford in the future, although I can't speak for all of my fellow Essex MPs. Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is a unique opportunity. I have checked the records and I'm the first MP for Harlow to have the opportunity to do so. Mind you, Harlow has only been a constituency since the 1970s, and I'm not going to count the previous MP, Winston Churchill, who represented what is now Harlow when it came under Epping. Mr. Speaker, it may be the first time that a Harlow MP has delivered this speech, but I believe this opportunity has come at the right time. When I reflect on the hurdles ahead, a lot can be learned by looking at Harlow's past and looking at Harlow's future. Mr. Speaker, I came about seconding the humble address, much like my honourable friend, when I received a phone call from the Chief Whip on the train home. And like my honourable friend and other members, I'm sure, across the House, the first thing I thought was, what have I done wrong? I thought perhaps, like some members across the House, he'd misheard me when I said horned during a speech in this place. And I didn't much fancy explaining to him that I said horned, and not any other word that sounds like horned, on a train that was full of my constituents. Thankfully, that was not the case. The Chief Whip told me there were certain traditions around the King's speech, that the speech should be humorous and was an opportunity to mention the member's constituency as often as possible. This did sound like a good gig to me, to be fair. Now, I can't necessarily promise humour, although I'll give it a good go. But I can certainly promise that I will mention Harlow as often as possible. And for those listening at home, you may wish to count the number of times I do so. I believe the current count is 7. Is it 8? What did I do for a living? Harlow, Mr. Speaker, is never a dull place to represent, and members across the House will know that Harlow once again bucked the national trend when it came to last week's local election results. We are getting quite good at that, even if it might not have been quite the way I would have liked. However, what it does show is the ambition for the people of Harlow to see their town improve and grow, something that can only happen with this government's continued investment. Hint, hint. The Chief Whip also told me that it was tradition to have an established MP propose the King's speech and for a bright young thing to second it. I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I'm not particularly bright. I'm not particularly young. But I'm definitely a thing. So, I can absolutely claim 1/3 of that description. I actually think the Chief Whip asked me to give this speech because he was aware that on the last day of term, I failed to achieve my 400th contribution to Hansard. So, look, I want to thank everybody for being here so I can now do so. And I look forward, in this parliamentary term, making a further 400 contributions with multiple references about Harlow, my mother's sterling career in HMRC, and the fact I may have previously been a maths teacher. There is more, though. I think we would all recognise, as His Majesty does, this King's speech comes at an increasingly dangerous and volatile time, which, like honourable friends and honourable members, I've spent a great deal of time thinking about. It's during this turmoil that I've taken the time to reflect on what it means to be British, those British values, what our country is about. What is the real Britain? We say Britishness more and more, but it can mean any number of things to any number of people. When I think about what it means to be British, I think about my recent experience running the London Marathon. And, just to be clear, I am not referring to when the Honourable Member for Badenoch Billericay with his Union flag shorts on overtook me on mile 17, just like I hit the metaphorical wall. I have looked it up, he's 2 years younger than me, so I've got this good. During the marathon run, Mr. Speaker, or perhaps in my case I should say marathon limp, along the streets of London, I saw neither hate nor division. I saw unity. I saw people coming together to cheer on perfect strangers in their shared endeavour. I saw Gordon Ramsay randomly heckle me to carry on. And, Mr. Speaker, I even got supported by a Man United supporter. I saw everyone, Mr. Speaker, man or woman, black or white, gay or straight, all laying the 26.2-mile course. And, by the way, that 0.2 miles at the end is only made possible by those supporters. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, that is the Britain I know. That is the Britain that I love. Yeah. And that sense of supporting one another, of coming together as a community in hardship and celebration, is alive and well in Harlow. In fact, it is baked into the very foundation of Harlow when it first conceived as part of the Newtown Revolution under the first majority Labour government in 1945. Yeah. Harlow remains a strong community today, and when I think of Britishness, I think of Rainbow Services, which supports projects across Harlow by getting young people to build infrastructure for their community. I think of Streets to Homes, the homes charity I worked at, which supports the most vulnerable in our society, and I think about the Michael Roberts Charity Foundation, which runs the local food bank. As I mentioned, Harlow itself is a post-war new town, designed by Sir Frederick Gibbard to be a place of neighbourhoods and communities. It was built as a solution to the problem of overcrowding in London. Harlow sought to alleviate this pressure while keeping communities tightly knit together. You can still see remnants of that today. People from Walthamstow move into the Stow in Harlow, giving people a fresh start in life with all the comforts of their community. To this day, Harlow is one community built by lots of smaller and close communities like Potter Street, Bush Fair, Church Langley, and Little Parndon. As Harlow grew into its new town, so too did its pioneering spirit. And just 2 weeks ago, I was lucky enough to recognise one of those pioneers by unveiling a blue plaque in memory of Harlow-raised scientist Dr. George Hockham, one of the key brains behind the invention of the fibre optic cable. Fibre optic cable, created in Harlow, revolutionised modern communication, not just in Britain, but across the world. For me, George Hockham and many others like him from Harlow can be an inspiration for Harlow's next generation, a generation that deserves a government on their side. I think of inspirations like Professor Hannah Fry and Paralympian Anne Strike. These inspirations are a reminder of what it means to be British, to achieve so much and to have such a proud community behind you. Harlow has a history to be proud of and a future to be excited about too. As a former teacher, I don't know if I've mentioned that, I am filled with pride when I visit schools across Harlow and see the incredible young people learning there. That is why I'm proud that education is at the heart of this government's offer in the King's Speech, building on the work done by the previous parliamentary session. Looking into the future session, the government will tackle the broken SEND system, giving every young person with SEND the support they need and supporting parents, not leaving them to battle a broken system. This cuts across this House, as I'm sure every honourable member can recall a constituent coming to them broken with nowhere to turn, at their wits' end with an SEND system that benefits no one. I know I certainly can. I also welcome the government's commitment to review the national curriculum to make it broader, as well as recognising the importance of citizenship, of financial education and the dangers of online harm. What our younger generation learns is so important. If I could achieve one thing when I look back on my time serving Harlow, I want to achieve for the young people in Harlow the aspiration they deserve. Every young person now, sitting in a classroom in Harlow, primary or secondary, should have the opportunity to aspire to achieve whatever they want to do. That is what I want for Harlow. Some might say that I'm standing here giving this maiden speech means anyone can achieve anything if they are resilient enough. Because let me tell you, I can roll with the punches, and believe me, in my journey to these green benches, it hasn't been without being knocked down along the way. What I say now directly to you, the young people of Harlow, is do not give up on your dreams. Do not let someone tell you you can't do it. I say to you, if you really want something and you are willing to work hard for it, you can achieve it. I'm proof of that. And I know in this government, you have a Prime Minister dedicated to give that opportunity to others, because he is even more proof of it than I am. I would be remiss, Mr. Speaker, if I didn't take an opportunity to mention a personal focus of mine in this place, and that is supporting young carers and young adult carers. And I take this opportunity to once again call on the government to ensure support for these particularly incredible young people is a golden thread which runs through everything that they do. But of course, Mr. Speaker, Harlow is about more than just its young people, and my community has not been immune to the pressures from the cost of living crisis. I welcome the work already done, the freezing of the rail fares and prescription charges, the lifting of the two-child benefit cap and the raising of the minimum wage. But I am pleased most of all that this government recognises in this King's Speech there is more to do to support families in Harlow. When we talk about living pressures, it is easy to get lost in the numbers. And as a mathematician at heart, this is even easier for me. But to bring it home, when I think of the reality facing hard-working and proud families in Harlow, I think of my friend Jamie. He works 6 days a week to pay the bills, to put food on the table for his 2-year-old son, to provide for his family. And at the end of the month, he has very little, if anything. He cannot enjoy himself. He cannot treat his family. So this parliamentary session, Mr. Speaker, must be defined by being the one where we see living standards improve for everyone in our society and not just the privileged few. That is what will be in the mind's eye when I cast my votes in this place. I am sure my honourable friend from Oldham is waiting anxiously for me to point out that as I stand here in this place, as I'm not just standing here as just a Labour MP, I am a Labour and Cooperative MP. I am proud of the Cooperative Party and the work it's been doing alongside the government to empower local communities, like mine in Harlow, through community ownership. I hope this next session will bring even more cooperative opportunities for people in Harlow. Though, of course, like many honourable members in this place, my constituency name does not encompass the full nature of my area. Harlow constituency does not end at the town boundary. I represent incredible villages too, with some incredible histories. I represent Roydon, a village that first appeared in the Domesday Book. Bordering Roydon are Lower Nasing and Dobbs Weir, which are home to the Lee Valley growers, some of the biggest vegetable producers in the country. I represent Shearing, which, with one of its most notable residents being Rod Stewart. And for the first time, Harlow includes Hatfield Heath and Hatfield Broadoak. I know the Leader of the Opposition will vaguely remember these places. Incredible communities with a strong sense of what it means to look after your neighbour. I've got a neighbour's reference in for the Media and Cultural Sport Secretary. There you go. Ironically, one of my predecessors, Bill Rammell, actually moved out of Harlow to one of these villages, though Harlow was not keen on this, so it expanded its boundaries to include him back in the constituency, and we welcome him. Part of the fun, Mr Speaker, of representing such a diverse community with its healthy share of rural and urban is the mix I get to experience as their MP. I can visit local businesses in the morning, talk to a group of students in the afternoon, then round out the day with a community event. I've attended my fair share of community events, Mr Speaker, although I'm not convinced it was a great idea to run the Matching Village 10K a week after the London Marathon. Didn't see the member for Billericay and Basildon there just He'd already finished, yeah. On the point of running, Mr Speaker, when I took part in the London Marathon, I received a card from my parliamentary team wishing me luck, with one member of my team commenting, "You've run enough elections, so a marathon should be easy." Which brings me, you'll be pleased to know, to my conclusion, and to a line that I want to end with, from one of my former teachers. Did I mention I was a teacher? Mr Feely used to teach me science, although I'm never really sure we did learn a lot of science in his lessons, to be fair. However, I think, Mr Speaker, this line, I think, perfectly sums up this government, and that is, we should always remember, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And I would respectfully remind members of that. Thank you, Mr Speaker.
The question is that the humble address be presented to His Majesty as follows. Most gracious Sovereign, we, Your Majesty's most dutiful and loyal subjects, the Commons of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, in Parliament assembled, beg leave to offer our humble thanks to Your Majesty for the gracious speech which Your Majesty has addressed to both Houses of Parliament. I now call the Leader of the Opposition, Right Honourable Kemi Badenoch.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This King's speech is taking place against the most extraordinary backdrop. We knew the carriages were booked, the horses were ready, the King was coming, but would we have a Prime Minister? So, Mr Speaker, it is such an honour to be the Leader of the Opposition who gets to respond today. May I start by congratulating the proposer and seconder of the Loyal Address on their excellent speeches. And can I also congratulate the whips for finding two backbenchers prepared to support the Prime Minister at this time. The Honourable Member for Bradford West gave a moving and funny speech. I especially appreciated her comments about black and brown faces on TV, or as my children say, "Oh look, it's mummy again." She only touched lightly on the fact that she is someone who has faced one of the most challenging childhoods imaginable, and yet, through the strength of her character, has made it to this place. She's made of tough stuff, and that is something we need more of in this House. Anyone who can boast of chewing up and spitting out George Galloway in an election is clearly formidable. I also congratulate the member for Harlow on successfully delivering a humorous and warm-hearted speech. As he noted, he is my constituency neighbour, and he also, yes, did run the London Marathon last month, raising money for St Clair Hospice, which cares for both our constituents, and so I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for doing that. So I've become a big fan of his after listening to his speech, especially after he was so generous in his comments about the Harlow Conservatives' successful election campaign and my councillor's outstanding work regenerating the town centre. And I would say to him, if things on that side of the House are getting a bit much, he would be very welcome to cross the floor and help Conservatives carry on that work. Mr. Speaker, I think we can say that the proposer and seconder of the loyal address have upheld the best traditions of the House. I would, of course, like to pay tribute to His Majesty the King. His Majesty has served through a period of great personal difficulty, and throughout he has exemplified the virtues of grace, dignity, humour, modesty and resolve in the face of adversity. Virtues which were on full display during his hugely successful state visit to the United States. And I'm sure the whole House will have admired his skillful speech to Congress. It was a speech full of the wisdom and courage needed for our times. Of course, we would never have got to hear it if we'd listened to some people in this House who called for the King's visit to be cancelled. But thank goodness no one listens to the leader of the Liberal Democrats. As for the Prime Minister, when he was young, he called for the end of the monarchy. So I'm glad that the Right Honourable and Learned Gentleman has seen the error of his ways, because previous King Charleses took a much dimmer view of that kind of thing. I'm only sorry that this newfound appreciation of the monarchy and our country's traditions have come too late, because this is the first parliamentary session ever without the hereditary peers. And their departure will be keenly felt, and our Parliament will be poorer for it. Especially, Mr. Speaker, when you consider some of the people that Labour have been replacing them with. People who've already had the whip removed before they've even taken their seats. Mr. Speaker, I know the convention is for this to be a light-hearted debate. But as I've already said, this is a highly unusual moment. The Prime Minister is in office, but not in power. Everyone is trying to pretend it's all right. It's not all right. In the past 48 hours, nearly 100 Labour MPs have called for the Prime Minister to resign. 4 ministers have quit. It is clear his authority has gone, and that he will not be able to deliver what little there is in this King's speech. This is a government less than 2 years in office, which has already run out of ideas and run out of road. So how did we get here? There is a great line in the musical Hamilton, Mr. Speaker. Winning is easy, governing is harder. Everything that has gone wrong in Labour's first 2 years comes back to one problem. They came into office with no plan. They did not understand the difference between winning an election and governing a country. It was very easy to make promises in opposition, promises to freeze council tax, promises to take £300 off energy bills, promises to the WASPy women. Hundreds of Labour MPs took photos with them to post on their Facebook pages and their websites and their election leaflets, but at no point did they bother to think how would they deliver any of it. They didn't spend their time in opposition thinking deeply about the country's problems. They assumed that governing in the 2020s would be like governing in the 1990s. But it isn't. Britain is facing new structural problems. We have an ageing... Mr. Speaker, they'll shout at me. I know they can't wait to get back to their plotting, but it's quite important that we hear what is going to be said. Because we have an ageing population, a falling birth rate, and a welfare bill that is spiralling out of control. We have an information revolution in the shape of AI that threatens to unravel the world of work as we know it, and the cost of energy is driving industry out of the country. Labour were taken by surprise that we are living in a more competitive and increasingly hostile world. Their manifesto was just a set of misleading promises. They promised no new taxes on working people. Fail. They promised to crack down on illegal immigration. Fail. They promised to tread more lightly on people's lives. Epic fail. They made promises without knowing how anything works. Let's look at housing. Just after Labour took office, when I was Shadow Housing Secretary, I stood at this dispatch box and warned the former Deputy Prime Minister that she had been stitched up. that the 1.5 million new homes Labour promised had been hung like a millstone around her neck. I knew that they wouldn't be able to meet that target because they didn't understand why more houses weren't being built. Sure enough, they are already more than a third down on their target and well behind what we delivered. Exactly. Of course, Mr. Speaker, in the end, it wasn't 1.5 million homes that did for the former Deputy Prime Minister. It took just one flat in Brighton to bring her down. Mr. Speaker, it is so obvious. It is so obvious. I know they don't want to hear it, Mr. Speaker, but this. I know they don't want to hear it. Look at them. They are so arrogant. They want to lead our country. They can't even lead a coup. It is so obvious, Mr. Speaker, that they cannot handle being in government. They cannot handle it. They hate the responsibility. They hate having to take tough decisions. They prefer scratching the itches that they had in opposition. Giving inflation-busting pay rises to the unions, 28% for the doctors who are still striking. Nearly 2 years, they are still striking. Handing out more benefits to the only people who will still vote for them because Labour don't understand that poverty isn't created by a lack of benefits, it's created by a failing economy. We spent, Mr. Speaker, the last session listening to Labour MPs telling us how great everything was going. No doubt we will hear lots of grandstanding speeches this week telling us what a fantastic job they did. How absurd, given the number of them demanding that the Prime Minister stands down. We counted, Mr. Speaker, there were 24 U-turns in that first parliamentary session. Winter fuel, family farms, grooming gangs, welfare reforms, social media for under-16s, day one workers' rights, the list goes on. And every single one of these U-turns had at its core a single issue: the Prime Minister's total lack of judgment. This is a man who, faced with a crisis of vision, charisma and electoral success, sent for Gordon Brown. Leadership, Mr. Speaker, is about having a vision for this country. It's about having the courage to take difficult decisions, persuading your party that those difficult decisions will pay off in time, and taking responsibility for your mistakes. He has failed on every count. We've had pillars, promises, 4-point plans, 5-point plans, missions, none of it achieving anything. Reset after reset after reset. Even if the Prime Minister does last long enough in office to deliver this gracious speech, the bills announced today do not remotely come close to what the country needs. I know that they're chuntering, Mr. Speaker. Not a single one of them actually dares to intervene on me in this speech. I do, Mr. Speaker, however, want to welcome the government's ongoing support to Ukraine and its commitment to NATO. In this increasingly dangerous world, it is more important than ever that we stand with our allies in the fight against tyranny. I also commend the government for its commitment to speed up the delivery of infrastructure, such as new nuclear. Too many governments have been frustrated in their attempts to deliver nuclear projects quickly, and we will support efforts to make this process simpler, faster and cheaper. I also want to be generous to the Home Secretary, because I can see that she is trying to do something about illegal immigration. But the elephant in the room is that she almost certainly won't be Home Secretary for much longer. Sadly, no one else in the Labour Party looks remotely interested in bringing down illegal immigration. The rest of this offering in the King's Speech, Mr. Speaker, makes it clear that they have learnt no lessons from their mistakes in government so far. All we have is a load of re-announced policies, hounding our brave veterans through the courts, legislating for digital ID, a policy they told us they dropped, banning trail hunting, just more class war that makes no one's life better, scrapping NHS England, something the Prime Minister announced 14 months ago. But then I suppose the Health Secretary has been a bit distracted lately, hasn't he? Yeah, hasn't he? Yeah. He he's chuntering now. Why don't you just do your job? Do your job. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, is what isn't in the gracious speech. There's no point in him giving me dirty looks. We all know what he's been up to. You'll know. Even worse, Mr. Speaker, is what isn't in the gracious speech. There is no defence readiness bill because apparently it isn't ready. Where are the plans for welfare reform? There are none because Labour MPs blocked them. Where is the plan to make savings? There isn't one because Labour don't know how to make savings. They only know how to spend money, other people's money. Where is the plan to support businesses? There isn't one, because they don't understand that it is business that creates growth, not government. They have no answers to what really matters, the problems that must be solved to get Britain working again. Now, Mr. Speaker, I will say that I do feel very sorry for Labour backbenchers. I do. They arrived here, not that it's true, I do feel sorry for Labour backbenchers, I do. They arrived here not that long ago with such high hopes. Some of them, in fact, were so talented, they were made ministers before ever speaking a word in Parliament. So talented. Although one of them has just resigned. I mustn't forget that. One of them has just resigned. We have watched, Mr. Speaker, their growing horror, day after day, week after week, as this hope descended into total chaos. The dread as they are sent out yet again to defend the indefensible. The injustice at feeling like pariahs in their own constituencies. Banned from pubs, banned from hairdressers, which is presumably why all the women on the front bench have the same hairstyle. The realization, Mr. Speaker, that their legacy is just going to be... Now, I wasn't... they can complain as much as they like. I wasn't expecting this to be comfortable for them. They're the ones who are trying to unseat their Prime Minister. They should face that. The realization, Mr. Speaker, that their legacy is just going to be breakfast clubs and Peter Mandelson. Labour MPs have been treated as disposable by their leadership. Sacked for backing the two-child benefit cap, sacked for opposing welfare changes, sacked for supporting farmers. The Prime Minister then U-turned on all of them. It must be tough when you take a principled stand and have the whip removed only for the government to confirm 6 months later that they agreed with you all along. It is no wonder, Mr. Speaker, that nearly 100 Labour MPs have now called for the Prime Minister to go. I know that there's another 100 who claim to be supporting him, although some of them didn't even know that their names were on that list. When you can only get a quarter of your MPs to publicly back you, the game is up. And so the starting gun for the Labour leadership contest has been fired. So let's have a look at the runners and riders. We have the former Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, former Deputy Prime Minister, who has given up vaping. She's not here. She's given up vaping, but still hasn't paid her taxes. We have the Health Secretary, who accidentally sent his takeover plans to Number 10, almost as incompetent as leaving them on the photocopier. And we have, Mr. Speaker, the Mayor of Manchester. The Mayor of Manchester, Mr. Speaker, a self-proclaimed winner who has twice failed to win the Labour leadership, including against the member for Islington North. As one Labour MP said about all the candidates in this race, and I quote, "We have to face up to the fact every single one of them is," I apologise, Mr. Speaker, F*** useless. I do feel sorry for the poor Labour MPs who will now be subjected to months of peacocking by leadership candidates while the country is not being governed. I have some advice for whichever of them eventually takes over. Getting to Number 10 is not an award for being in a game show. This is not Strictly Come Dancing, and despite appearances, it's not traitors either. If you are a housing secretary who can't work out her housing taxes, if you're a health secretary who can only cut waiting lists by deleting names from the waiting list, if you are Gordon Brown's former Chief Secretary to the Treasury and you think the bond markets are a hoax, I can assure you that being Prime Minister is going to be a lot tougher. Too many have failed because they thought winning an election or a leadership contest was the success. It is not. The work doesn't end when you get the job. That's when it starts. It is absolutely preposterous that the government is here laying out a programme as its ministers are resigning and a large proportion of the party is saying that the Prime Minister needs to go. The whole thing is totally illogical. Either Labour MPs agree with this agenda, in which case, why are they trying to get rid of the Prime Minister, or they don't agree with this agenda, in which case, what on earth are we all doing here? It is time to be brutally honest, Mr. Speaker. It is time to be brutally honest. The country is angry with the entire political class, all of us here. They are not happy with how we have been doing politics. It is time to get serious. I will give way. I will give way.
The Right Honourable Lady seeks to lecture us on why it is that everyone is so fed up with the political class, but uses this opportunity not to lay out what the Conservatives would do, but to spend her time insulting everybody on this side. Surely that's not the way to proceed.
Oh, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. There is plenty more coming. There is plenty more coming. And the Honourable Lady says she's getting a lecture. She is getting a lecture. She is getting a lecture. We're all getting a lecture because we are legislators of the United Kingdom. We were sent here to fix difficult things, not focus on our personal hobby horses, ranging from the petty to the puerile. I would say to members opposite, you don't need to be scared of the member for Clacton. I'm not. He is not the cause of Britain's problems. He is a symptom. No. He is. They are still, Mr. Speaker, they are still delusional. They are still delusional, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry to puncture the bubble. I am not here to pretend that what is happening is not happening. They can all pretend and live in la-la land. I'm going to speak the truth to them. He is not the cause of Britain's problems. He is a symptom of the failure of the political class to focus on what matters. If you fix the problems that people care about, he goes away. But I will give way. I will give way.
I'm very glad that she's giving way, and she's saying that the honourable member for Clacton is a symptom of the problems. But would she agree that what she and he both have in common is that she very loosely agreed that we should race into war with America in Iran? And then just a week later, she thought maybe that's not such a good idea. And doesn't that prove why she and he are totally unsuitable on this side of the House?
That was a nice try. It's not going to work. So, you cannot solve these problems, Mr. Speaker. You cannot solve the problems of the country unless you have a plan to fix the civil service, the regulators, the legislative straitjackets, powers transferred from Parliament to the courts. Unless you fix structures of government, everyone will continue to fail. Britain is not ungovernable, and it is not broken. The reason we published an alternative King's Speech, I'll say to the Honourable Lady who was asking what the plan was, we have published an alternative King's Speech, is because we need to take tough decisions to get the country out of the mess we're in. Cutting wasteful spending, funding defence, securing our borders, reducing the cost of energy. If you want to bring down bills for families and bring industry back to this country, you need a plan to scrap the net zero legislation, strangling industry and making energy costs higher. That's why we're proposing a cheap energy bill to do just that. If you want businesses to employ people, you need to stop crushing them with thousands of pages of employment laws and stop handing power to the unions. You need to stop hammering businesses with tax rises. That's why we're proposing a Get Britain Working bill that would scrap laws that are no longer fit for purpose and are killing jobs. If you want to get a grip on illegal immigration and remove foreign criminals from the country, you must have a plan to leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act. You must. Efforts to get control of our borders have been frustrated because power has been taken out of the hands of ministers. We need to bring that power back so that we don't have murderers staying in our country because the courts stop us from deporting them. Our alternative King's Speech shows how it can be done, letting the government, not the courts, decide who comes and goes. Prime Ministers are going to keep running into problems until they deal with activist lawyers and international agreements that tie the government's hands against the interests of the British public. Oh, Mr. Speaker, they're chanting that it... Mr. Speaker, they're chanting that it's... Does someone want to stand up and tell us who they're supporting? Is it the plotters or the PM? Is it? Because I know that's what they really want to get to. They're not interested in hearing what a plan for the country should be because they're too focused on Labour Party problems. Mr. Speaker, we will keep running into these problems until they deal with activist lawyers and international agreements that tie the government's hands against the interests of the British public. Next, we must reduce welfare spending. It is eating every penny that we generate in income tax and more. We must spend much more on defence. Even former Labour defence secretaries are pleading with the government to do this. That's why we're proposing a sovereign defence fund which will overhaul Britain's defence industrial base. That's what the alternative could be. That alternative King's Speech makes difficult choices because that is what leadership is. We have laid out these plans now because we are more than happy for Labour to take them. They might be our political opponents, Mr. Speaker, but we are all citizens of this country. We recognise the enormous challenges facing Britain. We want to see these problems solved, and so do our constituents. Time and again, I have offered the Prime Minister support to pass difficult legislation. Time and again, I have offered the Prime Minister support to pass difficult legislation. Time and again, he has turned it down. It might be too late for him now, but it's not too late for his successor. It is time to get serious. It is time to deliver. That is what the British public expect. That is what the Conservative Party will do.
I now call the Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, can I say what a pleasure it is to welcome the gracious speech of His Majesty and the radical agenda of this Labour government that will tear down the status quo that has failed working people and build a stronger, fairer Britain. Mr. Speaker, in light of the abhorrent attacks in Golders Green 2 weeks ago, let me start by briefly addressing that directly. It was the latest in a series of appalling anti-Semitic attacks. A normalisation of hatred that leads terrorists with warped Islamist ideologies to attack people they've never even met simply because they are Jewish. A hatred that leads some to march calling for the murder of British Jews and not to think there might be something wrong about that. Mr. Speaker, I've fought this hatred in my own political party. I've sat with others as they describe what it means for them. The fear, the sense that maybe they shouldn't wear something or do something that might reveal their Jewish identity, just in case. Mr. Speaker, it is time for the silent majority in this country to speak up, to stand with British Jews and defeat this hatred once and for all. Just as we will take on any form of hatred, from left or right, that seeks to divide us. Mr. Speaker, in the words of the gracious speech, we will defend the British values of decency, tolerance and respect for difference under our common flag. Mr Speaker, that is also why, when far-right agitators try to come here this Saturday to spread their poison of hatred, this Labour government will block them this time and every time. Yeah. Mr Speaker, the gracious speech was brilliantly proposed by my honourable friend, the member for Bradford West. Yeah. Members across the House will have read her remarkable new book. Her list of endorsements is truly impressive, reaching well over 100 members. At last, Mr Speaker, a list that we can all get behind. And Mr Speaker, it's not the first time that has shown her ability to bring people together. She united her city and many in this House when she sent George Galloway packing. And, Mr Speaker, the House will know that she is passionate about the measures this government is taking to lift 500,000 children out of poverty. As we all are on this side of the House, it is the pride of these benches. But the House might not know about her remarkable effort to get Marcus Rashford to champion free school meals and speak to pupils in her constituency. Now, most of us would have attempted this, Mr Speaker, via the complex world of agents and managers. But my honourable friend had a different idea. She spoke to, as you do, the sister of Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, I can imagine the Ronaldo household is used to fielding some pretty big offers. Multi-million-pound transfers, billions in brand sponsorships, Piers Morgan calling for the 8th time that day. But I cannot imagine the confusion in the Ronaldo family when they heard my honourable friend say, not is Cristiano Ronaldo available, but can you give me the number of Marcus Rashford? I want to invite him to a primary school in Allerton and have some porridge in our free breakfast club. Mr Speaker, on a much more serious note, I know the whole House will join me in paying tribute to my honourable friend's extraordinary courage, together with her mother, brother and sister. This story is utterly harrowing. Their strength to survive and the deep-rooted determination to fight for change is an inspiration for all of us and the very best of who we are. My honourable friend brings a lived experience to our politics, an empathy, a compassion, a humanity, an understanding of how easy it is to slip from a stable and secure life into one gripped by terrible deprivation. As she writes in her book, behind every word we utter must lie the foundation of real human experience. And in that spirit, I'm sure she will welcome the measures in this King's speech, which will deliver change grounded in that lived experience, and the tireless campaigners who have fought for justice, from remediation for those living in homes with unsafe cladding, to banning abusive conversion practices, from our mission to halve violence against women and girls, to the Hillsborough Law, which will bring justice for all. As she says so powerfully, equality, fairness and justice must belong to all of us. That is the driving purpose of our party, and her speech was in the finest traditions of this House. Mr Speaker, His Majesty's speech was also brilliantly seconded by the honourable friend, the member from Harlow. Now, we are all proud to represent our constituencies, but few of us so relentlessly name our constituency as those who represent Harlow. Members from previous parliaments will remember my honourable friend's predecessor, Robert Halfon, who seemed to get Harlow into pretty well all of his contributions. Well, my honourable friend will not be outdone. He has inherited the great Harlow shoehorn, and indeed, he's already recognised across this House as a one-man tourist board. And I have to thank the member for Huntingdon, caught in Hansard, referring to my honourable friend as the trade envoy to Harlow. A rare example of a good idea from the opposition. Because no matter the debate, my honourable friend will find the local connection, from championing the role of Harlow College in climate change to praising the invention of fibre optic cables in Harlow, and telling us how Harlow doubled for Paris during an episode of The Crown. Mr. Speaker, I remember very clearly my honourable friend saying to me that wherever he goes in the world, he is always thinking about Harlow. Mr. Speaker, he's quite right. And can I congratulate him on his amazing fundraising at this year's London Marathon, as has been mentioned. I do understand his disappointment at being overtaken by the right honourable member for Basildon and Billericay. All I can say is there is no shame in losing to someone whose training was so extensive that involved running all the way from North West Durham to Billericay. Mr. Speaker, as a secondary school maths teacher for 15 years, it is perhaps no surprise that my honourable friend brings an eye for detail, boundless energy and ability to handle these occasionally unruly benches. But he also brings a real passion for young people, a deep and personal understanding of the invaluable role that young carers play, and a total conviction in the power of education to change our country. So I know he will welcome the education bill in the gracious speech. And when the next series of Educating Essex is made, my honourable friend will rightly be the star. And I thank him for yet another fantastic speech today. Mr. Speaker, let me also thank the Leader of the Opposition for the usual warm and generous nature of her contribution. In difficult days, her input is always a ray of sunshine. I particularly getting tips from her on how to win friends. This is from the person, Mr. Speaker, who previously called us orcs and goons. Mr. Speaker, I am a gooner, and so, as usual, she is less than half right. But we do have one thing in common. Our parties both had tough results in the local elections last week. The difference is she hasn't noticed. And Mr. Speaker, there's another difference, Mr. Speaker. We are in government and they are no longer even the opposition. Mr. Speaker, this King's speech is a strike against the status quo that has failed working people. It's a King's speech for the young people whose gifts lie in their hands, who work hard, want their talents to be recognised and just want an opportunity in their community. A King's speech for the children who, under the party opposite, had to go to school without breakfast, hungry, cold and tired, when they should be focused on their learning. And, Mr. Speaker, it's a King's speech for the backbone of this country, for working people who worry about the cost of living, want their town centres to thrive, their public services to work, their government to be on their side. And, Mr. Speaker, we are, because the heart of this programme is a plan to make Britain stronger and Britain fairer. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, right now across the country, people turn on their television and they see bombs falling. They go to the petrol station and see prices rising, and they're worried sick about the consequences. We cannot stand here in this House and pretend that this is new. Britain has been buffeted by crises for decades now. The 2008 financial crash, the austerity that followed it, Brexit, COVID, and the war that still rages in Ukraine. And the response, their response, is always the same, a desperate attempt to get back to a status quo that failed working people, decimated their public services and made them pay the price. Our response this time must and will be different, a complete break. We will not simply slump back to the old ways, because this King's speech gives us the strength we need, the economic security energy security and national security to control our future in a chaotic world. It is an agenda of radical reform across our major public services, an urgent activist Labour government that tilts power back to workers, renters and the less fortunate, gives voice to the working class and to all those that the status quo has repeatedly ignored and dismissed, in favour of a Britain where everyone, whatever their background, can go as far as their talent and effort takes them, where people have a pride in where they live and hope in what lies ahead. That is the change of a Labour government, and this King's Speech delivers it. Mr. Speaker, we will deliver on economic security. And let me be clear, as the conflict in Iran unfolds, we are in a better position because of the action that my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, took last year, getting inflation down, borrowing down, and mortgage costs down. And that's why we've been able to cap energy bills, raise the living wage, strengthen workers' rights, and end the shameful two-child benefit limit, lifting 500,000 children out of poverty. And, Mr. Speaker, faced with challenges, we don't retreat from our Labour values. We use them as our compass. Strength through fairness. So we will keep supporting those who need it most, including by creating a new national programme to redistribute surplus food, so that no one in this country needs to go hungry because of the conflict overseas. We also need to strengthen our sovereign capabilities, because the days when this country turns its back on our critical industries, they are over. And we've seen that, Mr. Speaker, with British Steel, and we will see it with new legislation to clean up our waterways, a failure in the water industry that has been going on for decades. It is a disgrace, and this Labour government will tackle it. And, Mr. Speaker, we will take that moral urgency to every part of our nation, with bills to increase the pace of change in our NHS, in law enforcement, in controlling our borders and more. Because whilst immigration is down, we need to do more. Whilst violent crime is down, it needs to be lower. Whilst NHS waiting lists are down, we must go further. A rewiring of the state so that the working people of this country feel that it serves their interests. And, Mr. Speaker, we will also build in this country sovereign power in the industries of the future that will give us greater control in a world being reshaped by artificial intelligence. We will tear down the barriers to growth on planning, on faster infrastructure development, on business regulation, helping our great businesses, large and small. And, Mr. Speaker, we will, as a defining act of this government, rebuild our relationship with Europe. Britain back at the heart of a stronger Europe. That is good for growth. It will reduce the cost of living and strengthen our security. There is no good reason to oppose it. So for our economic security, for our Labour values, this government will act. Yes.
Okay. Prime Minister, in my part of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, we have been subjected now for some years to the humiliation of being governed by laws we don't make and can't change. And yet you, Prime Minister, now seem to want to impose that same denial of democracy in the whole United Kingdom by becoming a subservient rule taker from a foreign parliament. How is that in the interest of democracy?
Can I just say to Honourable, he's been here long enough to not blame me for the problem. I am not you. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank him for his intervention. I'm very well aware of the tensions in Northern Ireland, the issues that have to be dealt with in relation to relations with the EU. But we have to face the fact that promises were made about Brexit, which were not true, which haven't borne fruit. It is in our economic interests, our national interest and defence interests to be closer to Europe. Of course, we will navigate carefully, taking on board the issues in Northern Ireland, as he would expect. But it is in our interest to be closer to the EU. That is what we are doing, and we will go further. Mr. Speaker, this moment also demands even greater radicalism on energy security. the British people should not have to pay more in their bills, and their living standards should not be hit because of a war that they did not vote for, that Britain is not involved in, happening thousands of miles away. That is a fundamental argument of this government, and the party opposite has no answer to it. Because for decades they ducked the long-term decisions to make our country, our energy and our economy stronger. So we are going to take control. We are going to declare Britain's energy independence. That does not mean, and it will not mean, that we turn off the taps in the North Sea. Oil and gas will be part of the mix for decades. But we have to move so much faster on clean energy, a whole society effort, everyone playing their part, as we take control of our energy security. And, Mr. Speaker, I will.
I'm very grateful to the Prime Minister for giving way. He talks about energy security, and he should know that Scotland currently exists in a state of energy surplus. We generate more electricity than we use, and he should know that under conditions of surplus, prices go down. But in Scotland, because we have to be stuck in the GB energy market, we pay for the scarcity of energy in England, but not just to the equal, to the detriment, higher prices for energy in Scotland. Can he explain why that dysfunction exists and what's in this King's speech to fix it?
Well, what's in this King's speech to fix it is moving faster to our energy independence. That is the way that we get off the international markets. That is the way that we take control and reduce bills for people across the country. Mr. Speaker, we will, of course, also strengthen our country's defence security. That starts with the fundamentals and a recognition that it is not in the interests of this country to rush into a war without any thought of the consequences. That is my position. That has always been my position, regardless of the pressure. A test of judgment which some in this House have failed. It continues, Mr. Speaker, with our commitment to NATO, the most successful defensive alliance in history. A proud achievement of this party that others would throw away. Today, faced with even greater threats, we need to strengthen NATO, we need to invest in our defence capabilities, and we need to strengthen the European element of NATO, because this nation is stronger when it stands with others, not just in word, but in deed. We are prepared to lead from the front, to bring nations together in this moment of danger, to support Ukraine, including through the coalition of the willing, and to act with our allies to reassure shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Because, Mr. Speaker, we're not merely content to manage the fallout of the Iran crisis. Instead, we're building an international effort to solve it and end the economic harm. And of course, Mr. Speaker, standing up for the defence and security of the United Kingdom depends on one thing above all else: ending 14 years of Tory defence austerity, with the biggest sustained investment since the Cold War. And we will go further with the measures outlined in the King's speech, with our upcoming defence investment plan. And, Mr. Speaker, we will develop the capabilities our nation needs. We will also deepen our partnerships to fire up our industries and make sure that British skill, British pride and British resolve are converted into British jobs in a stronger, fairer Britain. Yes, I will.
For the Prime Minister for giving way. He's used a lot of words about the Defence Investment Plan, which was, I think, due in the autumn of last year. So when's he going to sign it?
I'll take no lectures from the party opposite. They hollowed out defence spend. Defence spend was 2.5% when they came into power, 2.3% when they left power. The investment plan is being finalised and will be published soon. But, Mr. Speaker, the strength is the foundation. That's the way we maintain our control, even in the storms of blood. I won't give way.
I mean, the Prime Minister quite rightly prioritised the defence of the country. We have depended for decades on the courage, honour and loyalty of our soldiers. They, of course, some of our best units, are now losing soldiers because this government is undermining them and allowing them to be prosecuted and persecuted for alleged crimes that were not carried out decades ago in the Northern Ireland Bill.
Mr. Speaker, he knows very well that the provisions in Northern Ireland are intended to strike the right balance between what needs to be done and protecting our veterans. We are, of course, proud of all those that have served and do serve our country, but the legislation that was put forward by the last government was struck down, leaving no protection whatsoever. Because, Mr. Speaker, I'll make some progress. The way we change our country, rather than make our progress.
He will know that in the recent Supreme Court Dillon judgment, the court ruled that our Legacy Act overwhelmingly was not incompatible with the Human Rights Act. He knows that. But he referenced the awful events in Golders Green, rightfully. And he defended the police officers against attacks on the leader of the Green Party, rightfully, and said they had to take split-second decisions. So if Northern Ireland veterans had to take split-second decisions to uphold the rule of law in Northern Ireland, what's the difference?
I have been in control rooms in Northern Ireland, watching decisions being taken on the use of fatal force. I'm well aware of the nature of the decisions that have to be taken, the circumstances in which they're taken, and how difficult those decisions are. That is not the same as the issues in this bill, and he knows it. Mr. Speaker, strength is the foundation. It is the way we maintain our control, even in the storms of this world, the way we change our country rather than just manage the crisis. And more than anything, change means a Britain where every child can go as far as their talent or effort allows. It is a beautiful idea, one that I know is shared across the House. But we need, as representatives of this country, to see the country as a whole, to make sure we see every child, including the children who are growing up in poverty, the children who have special educational needs, and the young people who can't get a job, and the people who are ignored, excluded from our highest aspirations because they don't want to go to university. This is a King's Speech to change that, Mr. Speaker, once and for all. Mr. Speaker, my late brother had difficulties learning, and he had to fight every day just to be seen. And there are millions of people like him, people who are ignored by a system, a status quo that has no expectations for them. This King's Speech will make sure no child is left behind, because everyone has something to contribute to the success of this nation. And every child must succeed if we're to build a stronger, fairer Britain. That is how we tear down the status quo preserved by the party opposite, a status quo that failed working people, a status quo that left Britain's economy exposed, a status quo that made our country weak. There are some in this country, some even in this House, who would feed the frustration with that status quo into a politics of grievance and division. This King's Speech sets a different course, a more hopeful course, a course that sees the conflict in Iran, a war on two fronts, not as something to wring our hands about, but as an opportunity we must take to shape our country's future, to end the status quo that has failed working people, to build a stronger, fairer Britain. That is what this King's Speech delivers, and I commend it to the House.
The Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Sir Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And may I start by giving my sincere thanks to His Majesty King Charles for His Grace's speech on behalf of all Liberal Democrats. While we still believe President Trump should not have been rewarded for insulting British soldiers and the Royal Navy, His Majesty was superb on that state visit. And can I join others in paying tribute to the honourable members for Bradford West and for Harlow for their accomplished speeches, proposing seconding the Royal Address. Like myself, the Honourable Lady worked in a factory. For her, it was crisps. For me, it was pork pies. If we throw in the Honourable Member for the Isle of Wight West, who worked in the soft drinks industry, together we are a meal deal. But may I say, she is the real McCoy. The Honourable Member for Bradford West has already had an extraordinary life and career, talking from first-hand experience about how violence against women and homelessness touches millions of people, and we are in her debt for that and for her bravery and courage. Can I also congratulate the Honourable Member for Harlow for his speech? I hear he recently ran the London Marathon. Now, the House might be shocked to know I have more experience with crisps than long-distance running. But I would add that it's a great pleasure to work with him on young carers and young adult carers, something we are both passionate about. And can I thank him for his leadership chairing the all-party parliamentary group. As others have mentioned, including himself, the Honourable Gentleman was a maths teacher for many years and no doubt had to deal with bad behaviour in the classroom. He may want to advise the Prime Minister on whether the Health Secretary should be put in detention. Mr. Speaker, there's a lot to cover in responding to this King's speech, but I want to start by addressing directly the atrocious acts of anti-Semitism British Jews are experiencing at the moment, the insecurity and fears the community now feel. Week after week, British Jews are being attacked, intimidated and persecuted. Heaton Park Synagogue, Kenton United Synagogue, Finchley Reform Synagogue, Jewish Futures in Hendon, the Hatzola ambulances, and now the Golders Green stabbings. When I visited Marble Arch Synagogue last week, members of the Jewish community questioned whether Britain is a safe place for them, whether they must move abroad to be safe. No one should have to ask themselves this question in our country today. No one. The Independent Review of Terrorism Legislation, Jonathan Hall, is right to call these appalling levels of anti-Semitism a national security emergency. He's also right to say that existing laws must be properly enforced. That's why I welcome the government's initiative to bring forward a policing bill and urge it to ensure police and prosecutors receive the right training and support to pursue anti-Semitic crimes much more effectively. And it's why we on these benches have long called for the IRGC to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation to tackle the threat that these Iranian terrorists pose to British Jews. The legislation finally confirmed today, I believe, to prescribe the IRGC must be a top and urgent priority for legislation. Mr. Yes, I have to give way.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome what the Prime Minister is doing in relation to IRGC, but he will be aware that some 30,000 individuals who protested in the streets of Iran are in jail. Some of those are on death row, about to be executed because of standing up for liberty and freedom. Does he feel that maybe government should, perhaps, and the Prime Minister in particular, should be taking action to try and get those people freed? Because now's the time to act. Thank you.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman is right to mention those individuals in Iran who have been persecuted by the appalling Iranian regime, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure the Foreign Secretary will have heard that and will make as many representations as possible, though I accept this is not an easy matter given the regime in Tehran. Mr. Speaker, this is the 23rd humble address I've listened to in this House, and it's the most surreal by far. Everyone in this House and everyone in the country know this Prime Minister may soon not be in power, not in place for his own programme, not able to deliver these promises. Mr. Speaker, the votes on this King's speech ought to be interesting, a test of confidence in this government and this Prime Minister. We will be voting against this King's speech, Mr. Speaker, but how many members opposite will? By my reckoning, if every Labour MP who's called for the Prime Minister to go voted that way, this government's huge majority would be at risk. Let's see if they have the courage of their convictions. We will be voting against, not just because the Prime Minister is one of the weakest Prime Ministers in post-war history now, but because this King's speech does not offer the change our country needs. It does not offer the change needed to fix the insecurity people and businesses are increasingly fearful of. change to deal with rising prices. People know inflation in food, energy and fuel is set to rocket, but people don't think the Prime Minister has their backs on the economy. The financial and economic insecurity stalking our country is hitting growth, investment and jobs. And we were promised change, promised a government with growth as its mission. Yet rather than change, we have continuity from the failures that came before. Faced with this calamity, what has the Prime Minister offered us today on growth? An EU reset bill that fails to reset. For a Prime Minister who knows a thing or two about failed resets, maybe we shouldn't be surprised, but the Prime Minister's refusal to remove his red lines on a new EU-UK customs union, the Prime Minister's refusal to go further than his red lines on the single market, the Prime Minister's refusal to deliver a new, deep trading relationship with our European partners with a proper youth mobility scheme. That all means he's consigning our country to higher prices and lower growth, and failing to address the economic insecurity plaguing our economy. Instead, we've been given taxes on jobs, the family farm tax. Now, to be fair to the government, not for a second. Now, to be fair to the government, part of our current economic problems stem from President Trump and his reckless war in Iran. Let's be absolutely clear. Trump's war is stoking the cost of living crisis to new alarming levels. Fuel prices up at the pump, food prices set to go up even more, and people's holidays threatened. The Prime Minister's biggest success is not taking us into Trump's damaging war with Iran when the Conservatives and Reform were urging him to do so. Yet by failing to build new and deeper economic alliances with Europe and the Commonwealth, as we have been urging, this country is set to be hit far harder by the inflation coming from the Straits of Hormuz.
Thank you for giving way. And I think we all recognise the impact that Trump's war is going to have on the economy. He offers membership of the single market and the customs union as a solution to this. Prices in Edinburgh South West are going up right now. How long would it take to access the single market? How long would it take to be a member of the customs union, in his estimation?
Grateful for the honourable gentleman's intervention. He obviously didn't notice that we've been the only party putting forward a costed package to reduce the cost of petrol and diesel at the pumps, and that could be done immediately. So I think the honourable member should pay more attention. Trumpflation is predicted to be worse here because of the failures of this government and indeed the last. And Mr. Speaker, cozying up to this White House was never going to work. And it hasn't. And I suspect history will show that the Prime Minister's approach to President Trump was one of his worst mistakes. The sad truth is that President Trump is one of the reasons why so many people in our country do feel insecure, anxious and fearful about the future. From trade tariffs to the weakening of NATO, President Trump has broken all the certainties British people and British businesses used to rely upon. Yet this government has been far too slow to realise this and to respond to this new reality. The Conservatives and Reform may not have woken up, but there's no excuse for the government. And so it's been left to us, Madam Deputy Speaker. The country can know that my party will champion new and changing international alliances so vital for the British economy and the defence of the United Kingdom. But let me try to find an area of agreement. I do welcome the government's decision to bring forward an energy independence bill, though we will scrutinise it line by line and advance our more ambitious ideas. But I've long felt energy independence should be a long-term goal for our country and our allies. Even before Trump's war in Iran, people and businesses were being hit because of our dependence on others for fuel. Energy bills for households are still around a third higher than before Putin's war in Ukraine. When fossil fuel dictators like Vladimir Putin can hit the pockets of every family and pensioner in our country, when tyrannical regimes like Tehran's can hold our country and the world to ransom, surely it's time to wake up. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, oil and gas prices have a long history of spiking and hurting our economy. Even when North Sea oil and gas production was at its height, now almost 30 years ago, the UK could still be hit because we have always been price takers. And while I've always been pragmatic on our North Sea oil industry, for our economy, not least in Scotland, it is simply fantasy and fabrication for some in this House to pretend there is a solution in the North Sea to high energy prices. The best way to cut energy bills is to invest in homegrown renewable power. So in the Energy Independence Bill, we will push the government to go further, just like we did early in this Parliament on solar power with the Sunshine Bill of my honourable friend for Cheltenham. Now law. And Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, or whoever replaces him, must take up our plan to protect people from Trumpflation on fuel bills and cut fuel duty, rail fares and bus prices, protect British families and businesses right now. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Liberal Democrat agenda of greater security for families and businesses begins with greater economic, financial and energy security, but it's also built on greater security for our country. The government must do far more to bolster our nation's defences. With Vladimir Putin waging war in Europe and the need to redouble our efforts to support our brave Ukrainian allies to beat Russia, with a wildly unpredictable president sitting in the White House, leading a dangerous, idiotic war in the Middle East, and then undermining NATO at every turn, with a world order challenged by the rise of China, the case for urgent and significant rises in defence spending is clearly a strong one. And it is even stronger when one looks at the state of our defence readiness. The Conservatives failed on the #1 task of any government to defend our country and back our armed forces. They left our army at the lowest size since Napoleonic wars. They left our navy at the lowest size since the English Civil War. And yet this Labour government has moved at a snail's pace, failing month after month to publish their own defence investment plan. In contrast, Madam Deputy Speaker, we've called for the immediate launch of defence bonds to raise $20 billion over 2 years, building on successful models used by Poland, and for a commitment to spending 3% of GDP on defence by 2030 at the latest. We've argued for a new European rearmament bank, so our defence industries will lead the next generation of defence technologies. If the history of the last century has taught us anything, if the experience of President Trump has taught us anything, it is essential and urgent that we work with our European and Commonwealth allies to secure and defend our country, our values and our way of life. And central to our British way of life, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the NHS, to which I now turn. And it's important I do so, because I'm likely to be the only opposition party leader to stand up for healthcare in this debate, as the Conservatives are so embarrassed by their record, and Reform's leader has spent decades saying he wants to get rid of the NHS entirely. Now, the government would have us believe that he's turned the NHS round after the mess left by the last government. But when he's not plotting his next leadership bid on the Prime Minister, the Secretary of State would have Labour backbenchers believe he's fixing the NHS. If only, Madam Deputy Speaker, if only. Now we're told that the Health Secretary is preparing to resign tomorrow. Madam Deputy Speaker, this resignation is taking so long it would give NHS waiting lists a run for their money. Anyone who visits their local hospital knows that the NHS remains in a critical state. Thousands of people are still being treated in hospital corridors every day. We're now even seeing job adverts for people to provide care in corridors. I'll give way.
Be interested if he could remind us how he voted on Andrew Lancaster's reforms of the NHS, many of which are still creating problems in our NHS today.
Many of those, and he ought to know that there's not only been a long time when this party was messing up our NHS, but they've had 2 years and they've absolutely failed, Madam Deputy Speaker. And let's turn to their promises to turn round primary care, with more GPs, more NHS dentists, more community pharmacists. Well, some areas of the country have been going backwards since this government came to power. And when it comes to people feeling more secure in their lives, in their futures, quality healthcare is central. I won't list off all our policies for fixing the NHS, except one: care, social care, family care, and not for the first time, I must declare an interest. The reason I want to focus on care is because it is the central, radical and transformational change that has to happen if we are to fix our NHS. 2 years ago, in the debate on the last Humble Address, I raised care with the Prime Minister as the big challenge the government had to tackle to rescue the NHS. I welcomed promises back then for cross-party working. But what's happened? Almost nothing. True, the excellent Baroness Casey has been dispatched around the country on a timetable written in the Treasury, but her report lands just before the election. So once again, nothing happens for care in this Parliament. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is a betrayal of the elderly and disabled who need better care, of their families and of the NHS. We will not let up in the fight to fix social care and to back people caring for their loved ones at home. We will put forward the changes our country needs for people to feel less insecure when facing old age and illness. And there's another aspect to our national life where insecurity has got worse and worse, and that's farming and food. British farmers are world-renowned. They are the key to ensuring everyone has high-quality and affordable food on their plates. And yet, they have been let down and forgotten time and again by the Conservatives, who undermined our food security with bad trade deals and botched funding. The last Conservative government left England as the only country in Europe where farmers aren't supported to produce food. But somehow this Labour government has managed to make things worse for farmers, not least with their terrible mess over the family farm tax. That is why we've been calling for a good food bill in this King's Speech to prioritise food security and back British farmers to produce British food. With Trump's idiotic war in Iran hitting farmers with everything from higher fertiliser costs to higher prices for red diesel, the need for our good food bill couldn't be more urgent. Coupled with our plans for a much closer trading relationship with Europe, there is a pathway to greater food security and lower food prices, and the government must seize it. Mr. Speaker, there are many ways in which our party believes the government should tackle the insecurity people across our country feel right now. From quicker, tougher action on the damage being done by social media to our young people and people's mental health, to backing the case for more community police officers to keep our communities safer, to having a fair asylum and immigration policy which is genuinely effective against irregular immigration, but welcomes people who play by the rules and contribute to our great country. From tackling the continuing scandals in our water industry to building the affordable and social housing so many families and young people desperately need, and ensuring children and families are at the heart of reform to special education needs. My honourable and right honourable colleagues will set out our approach on all these issues over the course of this debate. But I want to end by addressing the threat to our country from another source, from populist politicians and extremist parties, who sow division, who play the blame game, who make wild promises, and who are a threat to our very democracy. They are exploiting our broken political system, which both the Conservatives and Labour have failed to fix. The first past-the-post electoral system of winner takes all was supposed to bring stability, was supposed to provide majority government that could take the tough, long-term decisions to deliver for our country on the economy, on the NHS and on defence. And we see how badly it has failed. Majority governments, yes, but with 6 prime ministers in a decade, soon probably 7, hardly stability when so many people now ask, is Britain governable? And this concentration of power undermines so much and leads to the scandals that undermine the standing of our democracy even more. When a twice-sacked member of the House of Lords is handed the most prestigious ambassador post we have, despite the Prime Minister knowing his links to a convicted paedophile and sex trafficker, when a Conservative Prime Minister consistently broke the rules he himself set for the rest of us during one of our nation's most severe crises, when a leader of a political party thinks a £5 million gift from a Thai-based crypto billionaire doesn't reek of corruption, and the threat is clear. A Reform Party who takes its orders from their American boss at Mar-a-Lago could win a majority on less than a third of the popular vote under our electoral system. Madam Deputy Speaker, we must fix our broken political system before it's too late, and this King's Speech is not up to that historic, vital task. We need a new Magna Carta to enshrine the rights of citizens, protect us now from the populist extremists threatening our country. And I give way to, who was it wanting to be?
The honourable gentleman for giving way. I would point out that the results in Bradford district were some of the most unrepresentative, with Reform taking a majority of seats despite having only 23% of the popular vote there. So does he agree with me that while Reform made gains in seats, they are not what the majority of people in this country support?
The figures from Bradford, and she makes the case that our party makes for electoral reform at local government and national government. I may say in my honourable friends' constituencies of Twickenham and Richmond Park, we now have every single councillor, Madam Deputy Speaker, but we don't have every single vote, and we would welcome electoral reform in our councils where we are overrepresented, and I hope her government listens to the voices of these benches. Madam Deputy Speaker, it is clear the country wants change. When the battering the two old parties received at the recent elections, it's clear they're not offering it. Worryingly, many are looking to the extremes on the left and the right, thinking that if we burn the system down, things would improve. Yet I don't believe the British people want Trump's divisive, unfair America here, even though that's Reform's offer of change. And I don't believe British people want change with a reheated Corbynista agenda put forward by a Green Party which no longer offers serious action to protect our nature and our climate. So it will fall to this party, the only non-populist, non-extremist party left standing to offer the real change people crave. Our change is about building things up, not burning them down. Our change is about bringing people, communities and our country together, not dividing and blaming people. From Europe to social care, from energy to defence, from political reform to our environment, I'm proud to lead a party that's preparing for government so our country can be changed for the better.
Gareth Thomas.
Mr. Speaker, I should at the outset say how much I welcome the opening remarks of my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, about anti-Semitism. Kenton Synagogue and Golders Green sit very close to my constituency. The attacks were shocking and appalling, and so I welcome the government's determination to crack down on online hatred and anti-Semitism, and I take this opportunity to commend the courage and skill of the police officers who responded. One of the many important points that my honourable friend for Bradford West made in her excellent and humorous speech was about the need for those of faith, of all faiths, and indeed of no faith, to stand together against hatred. And that will resonate particularly in a constituency like mine. I say to my honourable friend, she gave a brilliant speech. She is an inspiration, and I suspect I am not the only member to feel that it is an honour to be in the same party as her. My honourable friend for Harlow, who is without doubt a rising star in our ranks, made me jealous about his marathon running skills. If he'll forgive me, I won't dwell on his love letter to Harlow, but I will dwell a little bit, if I may, on the shared commitment to cooperation that we both have, and hope that together and with other members of the Co-op parliamentary party, we will see progress on delivering solutions to the need for capital for more cooperatives to expand in our country over the time of this King's Speech. Madam Deputy Speaker, the biggest challenge our country faces remains how to put more money in people's pockets, to drive up living standards, and to do so at a time of ever-increasing global tensions. It's worth remembering what the Leader of the Opposition is clearly trying to forget, that after 14 years of austerity, after the Conservatives and their friends in Reform led us out of the world's biggest market, doing huge economic damage, our public services too are still in need of sustained investment.
In that regard, I share my constituents' impatience for change. I welcome the determination in the gracious address to continue to reform the leasehold system, to make, for example, service charges more transparent, fairer and easier to challenge. I welcome the plans to abolish NHS England, to help fund more investment in expanding GP services and to bring down waiting lists and waiting times in hospitals such as Northwick Park, which serves my constituents. And I welcome too the overdue crackdown on late payments by big firms to small businesses. There are two long-term changes, I believe, that are key to delivering sustained higher living standards, particularly for my constituents. Firstly, to secure far better access to Europe's single market, and secondly, far better access to finance for small businesses and the financially vulnerable. On Europe, I particularly welcome the European Partnership Bill in this gracious address as the next step towards a closer relationship with Europe. With the US increasingly unreliable as an ally, and with the economic damage from Brexit ever clearer, Britain needs to prioritise negotiating a dramatically better trade, defence and security deal with the EU. The imminent deal lowering barriers to trade in food will reduce red tape and lower business costs. The decision to rejoin Erasmus and the coming deal on youth mobility are positive too. A referendum in my lifetime on whether to rejoin the EU feels inevitable. And if it does, I will be very tempted to campaign to rejoin. We are, though, a long way from such a moment. The priority with the next UK-EU summit coming up should be to reach agreement for a full renegotiation of the TCA, to secure greater access to the single market, far more beneficial than mere customs union membership. The recently concluded EU-Swiss trade deal offers a helpful pointer, with much more integration into the single market for more sectors of their similarly service-based economy. Further security and defence cooperation, increased business mobility, mutual recognition agreements to remove duplicate product testing and certification to make it easier for businesses to sell British goods in European markets would make a significant difference for businesses here, for our economy and ultimately for living standards. Yes, you good one.
He's very kind, and I'm listening intently to his anticipation of a brighter future with a closer relationship with the EU. He even goes as far to say that he looks forward to another referendum on whether to rejoin the European Union. Does he agree with me that when you're sold an outcome on a false prospectus on a referendum, it's probably no big deal to have a rerun of that referendum so you can make an informed decision about your constitutional future?
The one thing I will agree with the honourable gentleman on is that we do need a closer relationship, and it is this government that has sought to rebuild relations with Europe and is doing so increasingly effectively. On the point about the need to open up opportunities for more cooperation with Europe, I recognise that we will have to pay to access the single market more easily. But given the damage to our economy, given the higher costs, the extra bureaucracy the poorly negotiated Brexit deal brought in its wake, we should be willing to negotiate that hard bargain. The second long-term issue that I think we should focus on as necessary to deliver sustained higher living standards is around banking. Millions of people and thousands of small businesses are locked out of affordable credit. Forced into high-cost or illegal lending, money is being taken from the pockets of the poorest and economic growth is being stifled. This is an entrenched but fixable market failure, which I hope the coming Financial Services Bill may help to begin to address. Research by the National Institute for Economic and Social Research, funded by the Treasury and the Department for Business and Trade, that was published in January, made the striking conclusion that if Britain had a network of mutual banks that had stronger direct relationships with their small business owners, that growth would be higher by between 1% and more than 2% over its first 5 years, rising to between 1.7% and 3.5% over the long term. It noted too how investment would be almost 2 to 3.5% higher in the first 5 years, rising to between 2 to almost 4.5% higher in the long run. The research and it is academic research, which looks at the impact of mutual banks in France, state-run German regional banks, and community development finance institutions in the US, considers how much more lending would happen if we had a somewhat less centralised banking model than we have currently here in the UK. There are many suggestions for how to deliver growth currently doing the rounds, but the scale of the impact of more investment in mutual or community banks, as this serious research suggests, does beg the obvious question of what more we could achieve in this Parliament in this area, to expand the reach and scale of mutual banks, building more direct and personal relationships with more small and medium-sized businesses, offering more affordable credit options for personal customers, and a greater willingness to back hard-headed community ownership initiatives that help to restore pride in the places we live. Fair banking legislation, similar to what exists in the US, would help. Proactive efforts to help credit unions expand by employers, particularly in the public sector, through payroll deduction options, would help too. The biggest banks should actively help support the expansion of community banks. One or two do. But they need sustained private capital investment. Barclays, Santander and HSBC invest in CDFIs or community banks in the US, but they don't here in the UK. That should change. Let me now turn to the international situation. I welcome the government's continuing support for Ukraine, the decision to stay out of the illegal conflict with Iran, and the strong support for NATO. The situation in Gaza remains profoundly disturbing. Every child under 5 in Gaza is considered undernourished by UNICEF and other aid agencies. Almost every school has been destroyed or severely damaged, and 96% of households lack adequate access to water. Over 1 million children are facing a catastrophic humanitarian crisis, which I would suggest demands fresh and sustained UK engagement. I strongly supported the government's decision last year to recognise the state of Palestine, to protect the viability of a two-state solution and create a path towards a lasting peace for the Israeli and Palestinian people. Distant as that prospect may seem, it remains, in my view, the only path to a sustainable peace for the Palestinians and Israelis alike. The UN documented more than 1,800 settler attacks last year in the West Bank, the highest on record, clearly part of a sustained campaign to reduce the possibility of a viable Palestinian state. So action to clamp down on goods coming into the UK from illegal settlements and to further sanction violent settlers is needed. Lastly, 80 years on since the founding meeting took place just across from where this House now meets, a renewed commitment to the United Nations has never been more necessary. For all its failings, and there have been many, it remains our best route for addressing conflicts, for tackling global health threats, for promoting the rights of all, for delivering humanitarian aid, and for championing the interests of the world's most vulnerable. With our coming G20 and then our coming G7 presidency, we are in a unique position to support the current UN Secretary-General as he seeks to rethink and reaffirm the UN's role for the world we're in now. I hope we'll support him in those efforts.
Sir Andrew Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for giving me a chance to contribute to this King's Speech debate today at such an early point in it. It's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Gentleman for Harrow West, and I want to express strong support for what he said about the government's determination, the whole of Parliament's determination to crack down on anti-Semitism. And I hope that he will have carried everyone in this House in the words that he used. It's a great pleasure also to congratulate the honourable members for Bradford West and for Harlow on their brilliant speeches today, which entertained and amused the House. The honourable gentleman for Harrow West said it was an honour to be in the same party as both of them, but I think all of us can say it's an honour to be in the same parliament as both of them, and they certainly did very well. I have to admit, Madam Deputy Speaker, that it is now 34 years since in 1992 I had the privilege of seconding the Queen's speech from over there. On that occasion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I referred to myself as an oily young man on the make, Those were the days.
Now he's an old man.
Those were the days, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Only old man.
Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are 3 points I wish to contribute briefly to the debate. 3 points that came off the doorsteps in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield during these recent elections, where I was listening very carefully to my constituents. Elections, incidentally, which were extremely successful for the Conservatives in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield, where we hold now all 10 seats on Birmingham City Council, having got rid of the last vestiges of the Labour Party in the royal town. That clean sweep in the royal town of Sutton Coldfield was not echoed across the city of Birmingham, where there are now 6 significant parties represented on the council, making governance even more difficult than it was before. And I urge the Treasury bench, and in particular the Secretary of State for the Environment and Local Government, to be on red alert about what happens now in the city of Birmingham. They are, I think, going to need to give the commissioners far greater powers. There are vulnerable people, old and young, who depend upon Birmingham City Council turning a page and becoming a more effective giver of good local governance. And the words of the Conservative leader of the Conservative group on the Birmingham City Council, Robert Alden, are important. He said, and I quote, "We'll try to work with people across the political spectrum to try and deliver these priorities." Now, Birmingham has languished under a profoundly inadequate Labour administration, which even the Labour Party nationally did not think was doing a proper job. And it will now require a Herculean effort of restraint and goodwill to deliver the governance the people of Birmingham are entitled to receive. This will involve, I think, also devolving more power locally. Governance is always best when it is closest to the people it seeks to serve. And certainly for the Royal Town of Sutton Coldfield's Town Council, under its outstanding leader, Simon Ward, we are ready for more devolution, and we think that will make life better for local people. The second point I want to make is about defence, because I think although the words are in the King's speech, there is an awful lot more that needs to be done. And Ukraine and President Trump have ushered in a new era on defence. And thank goodness, incidentally, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the last Conservative government was so fast to realise and arm and train the Ukrainians ahead of and during the early days of the illegal invasion by Russia. And the Prime Minister complains, he may or may not have some justice in that, he complains that the armed forces have been hollowed out over many years by both parties. But it is on his watch, that these acute problems have come to pass. George Robertson, respected on both sides of this House over very many years, has made it very clear that we must now rearm, we must increase our spending on defence, and I very much hope the government will provide far more urgency than they are providing at the moment to this cause. President Trump was not the first person to complain about Europe failing to pull its weight financially in NATO, but he is the first American president to take action, and Britain needs to step up. We need to lead European NATO with France and Germany, but also with Poland and cooperation with Ukraine, whose technology has redefined modern warfare. Australia and Canada are significantly increasing their spending, and I hope very much that the government will now, as I say, entertain far greater urgency in addressing these matters. I'm pleased to see that Gordon Brown is now at the heart of this Labour government, so I hope that he will explain the importance of soft power being the other side of the defence coin. There are many honourable ladies and gentlemen on the other side of the House who are experts on defence, and they know that the government made a terrible mistake in cutting further the amount that we spend on development. Development is a very important arrow in the defence quiver. And I hope very much indeed that Gordon Brown will be able to explain to the government why this is so important and why they have made such a mistake. Now, the third and final point I want to make, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about welfare. Welfare is now consuming every penny we raise in income tax, and we simply cannot go on like this. The government always appears to be caught in the headlights whenever welfare is discussed, and the last time they sought to tackle this issue, they were unable to carry their backbenches, and they failed to do so. And I submit that they failed to do so because they tackled it in the wrong way. And there are 3 rules of welfare reform, as I learnt many years ago as a junior welfare minister in John Major's government when I was a minister between 1995 and 1997. That may be 30 years ago, but the rules of welfare reform have not changed. It was, Madam Deputy Speaker, the most complex of the various ministerial jobs it was my privilege to undertake. And this is what I learnt. The first of all, you cannot take benefit money off poor people. It isn't right to do so anyway, and as constituency members of Parliament, we know that it cannot be done. None of us came into politics to make poor people poorer, and taking money off the poorest people is not something which anyone who's planning to reform welfare should entertain. Secondly, the only way to save on welfare is to freeze benefits, though not disability benefits, something I believe that no Conservative government has ever done. But by freezing benefits, you are able to make a very significant difference in the size of the budget. I give way, of course.
I thank the honourable gentleman for giving way. Rather than attack the most vulnerable in our society to pay for the nation's defence, why would the member not agree that it would be better to tax the banks and the large multinationals for their extravagant profits?
Well, I'm very worried that the honourable gentleman, who is also my friend, was not listening to what I said, because I said the first rule of benefit reform was not to take money, to take cash off very poor people. And I explained why it cannot be done, and that's what Labour found when they outlined their policies for welfare reform and then had to back off. But the third way is to narrow the gateways into a benefit. And we've seen through PIP particularly, but in other ways as well, that narrowing the gateways is an important aspect of any reform. I hope very much that the government will return to this issue with a well thought through plan and manage to carry people with them. The final point I want to make, Madam Deputy Speaker, which was also alluded to in the speech that the seconder made when he spoke about this being a king's speech for young people. I hope that it is. I fear that it isn't. We need to recognise in this House that we are presiding over a period of growing intergenerational inequality. And it's something this House must address, and I hope very much that the point which the seconder of the King's speech made will also inform the decisions that are made now by the government.
Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I start by congratulating my honourable friends, the members for Bradford West and Harlow, on 2 terrific speeches. Yeah. I have to say I am quite surprised to see my friend Harlow here without his London Marathon medal around his neck. But I'll gently say, come back when you've done 2 of them, and then you can start talking. Yeah, I'm not doing another. The lives of my constituents in Blackpool South may feel far removed from this place, but the legislation announced today in the King's speech will impact them. For 14 years, Blackpool was the poster child for government failure. My constituents have lived through the consequences of decisions made in this place. They have felt sharply the pressures of insecure work, poor housing, rising living costs and overstretched public services, and they have felt forgotten. But if Blackpool became an example of how badly politics can fail people, it can also be an example of what happens when this place gets it right. If the government can turn around the fortunes of a town with the worst health outcomes, lowest wages and highest levels of deprivation in the country, there is nowhere that can't succeed. Because when Blackpool succeeds, Britain succeeds. When we talk about the cost of living crisis, we are not just talking about the price of a pint of milk or loaf of bread. In Blackpool, we're experiencing food insecurity alongside debt, poor housing and an acute mental health crisis. Families already struggling to pay the rent are pushed further behind by insecure work and rising bills. This is not isolated problems and there is no quick fix. Legislation passed in this House matters so much in constituencies like mine. Strengthening the employment rights, increasing the minimum wage, expanding free childcare provision and providing security to renters are all examples of a real difference that is being made right now to working families in Blackpool. But with parents still skipping meals so their children can eat, there is still much work to be done. I hope the legislation announced today will ease the pressure on working people who have carried the burden of economic instability for far too long. Energy security is part of that challenge too. The devastating conflict in Iran is having a growing impact across the world. For families in Blackpool already struggling to make ends meet, another spike in their bills is devastating. My constituents deserve the security of knowing their energy supply is reliable and affordable, and the Energy Independence Bill hopefully will give them that. I welcome the commitments to improve patient care and support early intervention through the NHS Modernisation Bill, because health inequalities remains one of the biggest injustices facing my constituents. People in Blackpool spend around a third of their lives in poor health, and healthy life expectancy for men in my hometown is 50 years old. My son was born in Blackpool, as I was. The simple fact means he and all the other children born in our town are expected to live 10 years less than a child born in Hampshire. That's 10 years stolen before they've even had the chance to live them. There is nothing inevitable about those figures. They are a result of political choices and years of inequality. NHS reform must be meaningful, improving outcomes and giving people the chance to live longer and healthier lives. Having visited schools across my constituency, met with parents of SEND children and read hundreds of the responses to my constituency SEND survey, it's clear to me that the current system is not working for families in my constituency and beyond. Parents speak about fighting for support that should already be there. Schools are under enormous pressure and children are waiting far too long for the help they need. The funding secured earlier this year and the 2 new SEND schools in Blackpool is welcome, because it will mean more children are getting the support closer to home and fewer families are facing months of uncertainty and delay. But areas with the highest levels of need must receive support that reflects the reality in their area, because children growing up in Blackpool deserve the same opportunities as children growing up anywhere else in this country. As chair of the APPG for Hospitality and Tourism and the MP for a town built on tourism, I have followed discussions around the visitor levy closely. Tourism supports thousands of jobs in Blackpool. It gives young people the opportunities to join the job ladder, as it did with me selling Kiss Me Quick hats at 14, and the tourist pound reaches far beyond hotels and guest houses. It supports pubs, cafes, restaurants, theatres, attractions and transport links across our area. Before the introduction of the overnight visitor levy bill, the concerns of the sector must be taken seriously, because additional costs and additional burdens will hit them hardest. And if we are serious about supporting British tourism, I repeat my call on the Chancellor to reduce VAT for hospitality and tourism in line with other European countries. Just under 2 years ago in this House, I stood on the benches opposite when we were in opposition and asked my first question as the MP for Blackpool South. I called on taxi licensing reform. Taxis are an essential part of Blackpool's transport network, yet the licensing scheme has failed both passengers and our local economy. We need reform so that local drivers are protected, passengers are safe, and Blackpool gets the benefit of the revenue that's created in our town, instead of leaving down the motorway at the end of each day. After a long campaign, I'm delighted that the government will be taking action
that I've long campaigned for, to modernise taxi and private hire laws. This bill can finally address the issue of out-of-air working, protecting public safety and supporting local taxi revenue. Madam Deputy Speaker, in closing, this place has the power to change the direction of my seaside town story, and in doing so, change the story Britain tells about itself. So let that be the challenge for this Labour government. We want the trust of the country, then we must prove that we can rebuild places, unfortunately, the previous government too often written off. Prove that prosperity does not belong only to the wealthiest postcodes. Prove that working people, coastal towns and forgotten communities matter just as much as anywhere else in the United Kingdom. It will stand as proof that a different future is possible, fairer, more hopeful, more equal. Because, as I've said before, when Blackpool succeeds, Britain succeeds.
Yeah. So grateful to catch your eye in this important King's Speech debate, and I follow other colleagues in congratulating both the members for Bradford West and Harlow on their amusing and well-informed speeches. One of the few things, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government has got right in the King's Speech is the expedited bill to nationalise the Scunthorpe Steelworks to safeguard domestic steel production. That plant is costing the taxpayer £1 million a day, and therefore modernisation and future private and public investment under a government-owned company needs to be implemented. However, our economy is in a very fragile state. It's only growing by 1.3% in real terms in 25, and the OBR forecasts it will only grow by 1.4% in 2026, the lowest of any G7 country. The United Kingdom is carrying one of the highest level of borrowings in the Western world. National debt is a staggering £2.9 trillion, equivalent to 93.8% of our entire GDP, and equivalent to £102,000 per household. Even more concerning, we're expected to spend, wait for it, £111 billion on debt interest alone in servicing that debt. If this was a government department, it would be the third largest. We are heavily reliant on international markets, and our national balance sheet is highly leveraged. That leaves our economy dangerously exposed to external shocks, such as the war in Iran and the Ukraine conflict. As a result, our borrowing premium on that debt is one of the highest in the OECD. We're paying more in debt interest than Greece is today. A 1% rise in those interest rates adds £1.3 billion in costs in the first year and £12 billion by the end of the forecast period, as new expensive debt replaces older, cheaper debt. Indeed, 30-year gilts yesterday hit a 28-year high at 5.81%. That gives a clue as to what the international markets think of our economic standing. On that note, I note that one of the Labour leadership candidates does not have a clue how the bond market functioning our enormous debt actually works. With inflation expected to rise again, with some forecasters expecting it to reach 6.7% next year, we face the very real risk of sliding into recession or a bond strike. And if these very serious consequences were to occur, this country would be forced to take much more fundamental measures to cut our expenditure. A competent government should already be doing this to avoid any chance of this happening and our reputation in the international markets. I note the government has included a bill to reform the welfare system. 1 million people who could work but are not is causing unacceptable tax increases on the rest of the hard-working population's earnings. On top of this, higher interest rates are leading to higher food prices, mortgage payments and higher business costs. No one in this country, especially poorer working people, will be protected. Some of the issues we are seeing today are avoidable. Current political instability is a major factor. It's not my job as an opposition MP to tell the Labour how to sort out their leadership problems. But whatever they do, it is important to convince the international community and the people of this country that there is a stable, well-thought-out economic policy to give the markets confidence to reduce that current borrowing premium. It is not the job of the government to subsidise every business, but it is the duty of the government to create conditions in which growth, prosperity, enterprise and investment can thrive. The government has introduced a bill to target youth unemployment, which is welcome, but that unemployment has risen 16% or increased by 100,000 compared to a year ago, making it very hard for youngsters now leaving university or their further education to start in their working careers. Yet, businesses, particularly in hospitality and retail, are being taxed into oblivion and not hiring as many people. Can I just do this next paragraph, and I happily give way to the Honourable Lady. In my North Cotswolds constituency, we employ 3,700 people in hospitality, and it provides 220 million to the local economy. However, higher national employers' insurance contribution, rising minimum wages, hugely increasing business rates, energy increases, exacerbated by the Employment Rights Bill, are all making it harder to make profits and stalling growth. Taxes are already at a post-war high, and there are threats to hike them further. None of this environment is encouraging businesses to hire and take on more people and reduce the current high unemployment figures. I can wait to the Honourable Lady.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for giving way, and I agree entirely. This, to me, is one of the most business-hostile environments. Would you agree with me that your comments about young people not getting work are actually made worse by the national insurance hikes that have seen almost now a generation being unable to be employed? Would you agree with me on that contention?
Well, I'm very grateful.
Let's start the term as we mean to go on. No you or your, because it isn't me. So Geoffrey Clifton-Brown.
Lady, if I had to design a tax increase that wasn't a bigger tax on jobs than the hike in national insurance, it would be just that. And I do totally agree with her. And I think it's tragic, particularly for our young people trying to get into the world of work today. As chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, my focus is on value for money for the taxpayer and to ensure that no expenditure goes to waste. Figures published by the National Audit Financial Insights in January 2026 point a deeply worrying picture. The government now spends around 1.1 trillion of taxpayers' money across 17 departments. A department's accounts are qualified, sorry, this is getting a little technical, but just bear with me just a little bit in this section of the speech, when they do not spend their budgets as Parliament intends. The Department of Work and Pensions have had their accounts qualify for 36 years because their fraud and error rate is 3.3%, costing the taxpayer a staggering £9 billion. Overall, and this is even more staggering, the government has written off close to £7 billion this year across departments, including the MOD writing off £1.5 billion on purely cancelled debt, cancelled projects. I want to just repeat that. £7 billion has been written off this year from cancelled and wasted projects. I mean, that is staggering. The PAC has consistently recommended that each department improves its digital and AI efficiencies. We believe this should be implemented from the top down and that a Chief Digital and Information Officer should be appointed at a senior level in every department and on their arm's-length bodies. This would improve efficiencies and saving. After all, every efficiency and every saving that you can make is more money to spend somewhere else. The public sector is constantly behind the private sector digitally, and we need to do much better to ensure that our public services actually deliver for taxpayers using the latest and best technology to do so. Madam Deputy Speaker, AI is a tsunami which the government is nowhere near prepared to deal with. Only 5%, and I don't mean this as a criticism of the civil servants, it is just as it is. Only 5% of the civil service have specific IT qualifications. Some experts say this needs to rise to 10%, which would be a massive transformation. The government announced a bill to reform the welfare system. This year alone, the Department for Work and Pensions budget is expected to reach a projected £330 billion, or around 23.7% of UK spending. This almost outweighs what we're receiving in income tax for payments of £330 billion from hard-working people. Just imagine that. The total amount of income tax from hard-working people almost doesn't pay for the bill for the Department of Work and Pensions.